The emergency beacon screamed across the void of space, carrying with it the desperate plea of the Zilani Confederation. Ambassador Cathara's forearms trembled as she watched the holographic display show the approaching Vorthak armada. Hundreds of black ships moved like hungry insects toward her homeworld of Zelanos Prime. "The beacon is active, Ambassador," reported Communications Officer Rill, his blue skin pale with fear. "All allied frequencies are broadcasting our request for immediate military assistance." Cathara nodded, though hope felt like a luxury she could not afford. The Zilani had been part of the Galactic Peaceful Alliance for over 2 centuries. They had contributed resources, technology, and diplomatic expertise to countless peaceful missions. Now, when extinction stared them in the face, they finally called upon the mutual defense clause that had never been tested. The Vorthak were raiders, pirates, and killers who had emerged from the dark rim of the galaxy 6 months ago. They consumed everything in their path, leaving behind only dead worlds and scattered debris. No one knew where they came from, but everyone knew what they left behind. "Nothing. What responses are we receiving?" Cathara asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Rill's expression grew more worried. "The Altarian Republic says their fleet is engaged in border disputes with the Cathari Empire. The Siverian Union reports technical difficulties with their hyperspace drives. The Confederation of Free Worlds claims they are dealing with internal rebellions." Each excuse hit Cathara like a physical blow. 200 years of alliance, and when the moment of truth arrived, their so-called friends had found reasons to look the other way. She had spent decades building relationships with these civilizations, believing that the bonds of mutual respect and shared prosperity would hold when tested. "Keep broadcasting," she ordered. "Someone will answer. They have to." But even as she spoke the words, Cathara felt doubt creeping into her heart like ice water. The tactical display showed the Vorthak fleet would reach Zelanos Prime in 18 hours. Their homeworld had orbital defense platforms and a small system defense fleet, but against hundreds of enemy warships, resistance would last perhaps 30 minutes. The bridge of the diplomatic vessel Harmony's voice fell into a tense silence, broken only by the soft hum of electronics and the occasional beep of incoming transmissions. Each beep brought hope, and each message brought only more disappointment. Trade partners suddenly discovered pressing concerns elsewhere. Military allies reported unfortunate timing conflicts. "Ambassador," Rill said quietly, "we're receiving a response to our beacon." Cathara's head snapped up. "From whom?" "Unknown, ma'am. The signal is coming from the Outer Rim, Sector 77 Alpha. The transmission is unusual." "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, showing a being unlike any in their database. The creature appeared to be bipedal, with pale skin and strange fur growing only from the top of its head. Its eyes were small compared to most sentient species, and it had only 4 limbs total. Most disturbing of all, it showed its teeth when it spoke, which in most cultures was a sign of aggression. "This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Terran Defense. Fleet responding to your distress beacon," the alien said in remarkably clear galactic standard. "We're detecting a large hostile force approaching your position. What's your situation?" Cathara blinked in confusion. Terran? She had never heard of such a species, and the galactic database contained information on every known spacefaring civilization. "I am Ambassador Cathara of the Zilani Confederation. We are under attack by the Vorthak raiders. Our allies have failed to respond to our requests for aid." The alien's expression became what Cathara could only interpret as predatory. "How many ships are we talking about?" "Approximately 400 Vorthak vessels, various classes. They will reach our homeworld in 17 hours and 43 minutes. Copy that. We're dispatching a fleet to your location, ETA 16 hours. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. "Did that creature just say they were sending aid?" asked Rill. "It appeared so," Cathara replied slowly. "But who are these Terrans? And how can an unknown species possibly help against the Vorthak?" She turned to her science officer, a tall, thin Siverian named Dr. Venth. "Run a deep scan on that signal source. I want to know everything about where it came from." Dr. Venth's 6 fingers danced across his console. The signal originated from a region we've classified as uninhabitable. Sector 77 Alpha contains a yellow dwarf star with several planets, but initial surveys 3 centuries ago showed no signs of advanced life. The third planet from the star was deemed potentially habitable, but was never colonized due to its extreme conditions. What kind of extreme conditions? Gravity 1.3 times galactic standard. Atmospheric pressure nearly twice normal. Oxygen concentration levels that would be toxic to most species. Active tectonic plates causing frequent earthquakes. Severe weather patterns including massive storm systems. The planet was classified as a death world and marked as unsuitable for colonization. Cathara felt a chill run down her spine. A species that had evolved on a death world was coming to their aid? She wasn't sure if she should feel hopeful or terrified. "Keep monitoring all channels," she ordered, "and prepare a full briefing on the Vorthak tactical capabilities for our unexpected allies." As the hours passed, more details about the approaching Terrans emerged. Their ships appeared on long-range sensors as dark, angular vessels that moved with surprising speed and agility. Unlike the elegant curves favored by most civilized species, these craft looked like they had been designed by predators for predators. "Ambassador," Rill called out, "we're receiving tactical data from the Terran fleet. They're requesting detailed information about Vorthak weapons, shields, and battle tactics." Cathara reviewed the data package the Terrans had sent. It was thorough, professional, and utterly ruthless. They wanted to know about weak points, supply lines, command structures, and psychological profiles. These beings planned to fight the Vorthak not just with weapons, but with intelligence and strategy. "Send them everything we have," she decided. "If they're willing to face the Vorthak, they deserve every advantage we can provide." The Terran response came back within minutes. It was a single line of text. "Thanks. See you in 14 hours." As the Terran fleet drew closer, long-range, sensors began to provide more detailed information about these mysterious allies. The ships were unlike anything in the galactic database. Where most civilizations built vessels that were works of art as much as instruments of war, the Terran ships looked purely functional. They bristled with weapon systems, sensor arrays, and what appeared to be heavy armor plating. "How many ships are they bringing?" Cathara asked. Dr. Venth checked his readings twice before responding. 47 vessels of various classes." The bridge fell silent again. 47 ships against 400 Vorthak raiders. Either these Terrans were incredibly brave, completely insane, or they possessed technology far beyond anything the galaxy had seen before. "Ma'am," Rill said hesitantly, "the Terran Admiral is requesting a private communication channel." The screen flickered again, showing Admiral Chun's face. Up close, the human looked even more alien and somehow more dangerous. Her eyes held an intensity that made Cathara deeply uncomfortable. "Ambassador," the human said without preamble, "I need you to understand something before we engage. We're not here as peacekeepers or diplomats. We're here to destroy the Vorthak threat completely. If you have any moral objections to total warfare, now would be the time to voice them." Cathara considered her words carefully. The Zilani were a peaceful species by nature, but the Vorthak had shown no mercy to any of the worlds they had consumed. "Admiral Chun, the Vorthak have made their intentions clear. They seek only destruction. We will not mourn their defeat." The human's predatory smile returned. "Good, because where we come from, when someone threatens innocent people, we don't just stop them. We make sure they can never threaten anyone again." The transmission ended, and Cathara stared at the blank screen. In the space of a few hours, everything she thought she knew about the galaxy had been turned upside down. There were beings out there who had evolved on a world so hostile it was classified as uninhabitable. These beings had built starships and mastered space travel. And now they were coming to fight the most feared raiders in the galaxy with a fleet 1/10 the size of the enemy force. "All stations, prepare for battle," she announced to her crew. "And pray to whatever gods you believe in that our new allies know what they're doing." Through the viewports, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter as the Terran fleet approached. Soon, the Zilani would learn what it meant to have the backing of a species that called a death world home. The Vorthak were about to discover that in the vast darkness of space, there were predators far more dangerous than themselves. The countdown continued, 12 hours until the Terrans arrived, 15 hours until the Vorthak reached Zelanos Prime. The next day would determine whether the Zilani Confederation survived, or whether they would become another entry in the Vorthak's long list of conquered civilizations. But for the first time since the enemy fleet had been detected, Cathara felt something besides despair. She felt anticipation. The Gal. The Terran fleet dropped out of hyperspace with a violence that shook space itself. Ambassador Cathara watched from the Bridge of Harmonies, voice as 47 human warships materialized in perfect formation, their dark hulls seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. Each vessel moved with a predatory grace that spoke of advanced technology and deadly purpose. "By the ancestors," whispered Dr. Venth, his 6 fingers trembling over his console. "Look at their energy signatures." Cathara leaned forward to examine the readings. The Terran ships were generating power levels that should have been impossible for vessels of their size. Their shields blazed with energy that registered off the scale of standard galactic measurements. "Admiral Chun to all allied vessels," came the human's voice over the communication system. "We're establishing a defensive perimeter around Zelanos Prime. I need all civilian traffic cleared from the engagement zone immediately." "Admiral," Cathara responded, "the Vorthak fleet will outnumber you more than 8 to 1. Are you certain your forces are sufficient?" There was a pause, and when Admiral Chun responded, Cathara could hear something like amusement in her voice. "Ambassador, where we come from, those are favorable odds." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity as the Terrans positioned their fleet with mathematical precision. Unlike the loose formations favored by most galactic militaries, the humans deployed in tight, interlocking patterns that turned their entire force into a single, coordinated weapon system. Captain Vextar of the Zilani Defense Fleet contacted Harmony's voice as his small squadron moved to join the humans. "Ambassador, I've been monitoring Terran communications. Their tactical planning is unlike anything in our databases. They're discussing weapons and strategies that seem impossible." "What do you mean?" "They're talking about something called kinetic bombardment using hypervelocity projectiles. They've calculated firing solutions that account for gravitational distortion effects I've never heard of. And they keep mentioning something called nuclear ordnance, as if it were conventional ammunition." Cathara felt her blood chill. Nuclear weapons had been banned by galactic treaty for over 1,000 years after their devastating effects had been demonstrated. Only the most primitive and barbaric civilizations still employed such horrors. "Incoming Vorthak fleet," announced Rill. 412 vessels. Emerging from hyperspace at coordinates 7 Mark II, the enemy appeared as a dark cloud against the stars. Their ships built for intimidation as much as combat. Massive, angular vessels bristled with weapons and armor, while smaller raiders darted between them like hungry scavengers. The Vorthak had conquered dozens of worlds with this fleet, and they radiated confidence as they moved towards Zelanos Prime. "All Terran vessels, this is Admiral Chun, weapons free. Execute Plan Alpha." What happened next defied everything Cathara thought she knew about space combat. Instead of charging forward or taking defensive positions, the Terran fleet simply vanished. Where did they go? Demanded Captain Vextar over the communication link. Dr. Venth frantically worked his sensors. "I'm detecting massive gravity distortions throughout the system. It's like they folded space around themselves." The Vorthak fleet continued its approach, apparently unaware that their opponents had disappeared. The raiders maintained their standard attack formation, confident in their overwhelming numerical superiority. They had used the same tactics to crush resistance on every world they had conquered. Then the universe exploded. The first Terran attack came from empty space, appearing as streams of pure energy that struck 3 Vorthak cruisers simultaneously. The enemy vessels simply ceased to exist, vaporized so completely that their debris couldn't be detected. A heartbeat later, more beams lanced out from different positions. eliminating another dozen raiders with surgical precision. Cloaking technology, breathed Captain Vexstar. They're using some kind of advanced stealth system? But Kithara realized it was more than that. The humans weren't just invisible. They were using space itself as a weapon. Their ships moved through dimensions that normal physics said were impossible to access. Striking from positions that couldn't exist, the Vorthek fleet began to panic, firing wildly at shadows while their ships continued to disappear under the relentless Terran assault. Their return fire struck nothing but empty space, while the humans picked them apart with methodical efficiency. "Admiral Chun," Kithara called out. "Your tactics are extraordinary, but surely the Vorthek will adapt." "They're welcome to try," came the reply. "Switching to Phase 2, all vessels execute Ghost Protocol." The space around Zelanos Prime suddenly filled with what appeared to be hundreds of Terran warships. Identical vessels materialized throughout the system, each one firing devastating barrages at the increasingly confused Vorthak forces. "Holographic projections," Dr. Venth realized. "They're making the enemy see targets that aren't there while the real ships continue their assault." The Vorthek commander attempted to rally his forces, broadcasting orders for a coordinated counterattack, but the humans had been monitoring their communications, and every command was anticipated and countered before it could be executed. A group of Vorthak heavy cruisers broke away from the main fleet, attempting to bypass the battle and attack Zelanos Prime directly. They had barely changed course when space around them erupted in explosions that dwarfed anything seen in the main engagement. "What was that?" gasped Captain Vexstar. Admiral Chun's voice carried a note of grim satisfaction. "Minefields. We seeded the entire system with automated defense platforms while you weren't looking. Nothing gets through without our permission." The reality of the situation began to sink in for Kithara. The Terrans hadn't just brought a fleet to help defend Zelanos Prime, they had transformed the entire star system into a weapon. Every asteroid, every piece of space debris, every gravitational field had been turned into part of their defensive network. The Vorthak were learning what it meant to fight an enemy that had evolved. On a world where survival required constant adaptation and innovation, these humans thought in ways that no peaceful civilization could imagine, using strategies that turned traditional warfare into a deadly dance. "Vorthek command ship identified," reported one of the human officers over the open channel. 50 kilometers long, heavily armed and shielded. "It's their flagship?" "Copy that," Admiral Chun responded. "All vessels focus fire on target designation Alpha Prime." Time to cut off the head of the snake. The concentrated fire of the entire Terran fleet converged on the Vorthak command vessel. But instead of the energy weapons favored by most galactic militaries, the humans used something far more terrifying. Solid projectiles moving at significant fractions of the speed of light struck the enemy flagship with the force of natural disasters. The Vorthak command ship, which had seemed invincible moments before, cracked like an egg under the kinetic assault. Its shields collapsed, its armor vaporized, and its hull split open to spill atmosphere and crew into the vacuum of space. "Impossible," whispered Captain Vexstar. "Nothing should be able to punch through Vorthak armor like that." "Hypervelocity kinetics," explained Admiral Chun matter-of-factly. "When you accelerate something to 90% of light speed, it doesn't matter how thick their armor is. Physics becomes the ultimate weapon." The death of their command ship broke the Vorthak fleet's coordination completely. Some vessels attempted to flee, only to discover that the humans had positioned ships at every hyperspace jump point. Others tried to surrender, broadcasting standard galactic mercy codes. The Terran response was swift and final. No quarter was given, no mercy shown. Every Vorthak vessel was systematically hunted down and destroyed with the same methodical precision that had characterized the entire engagement. "Admiral," Kithara called out. Horrified by the slaughter, they're surrendering. "Galactic law requires—" "Ambassador," Admiral Chun interrupted, her voice hard as steel. "These raiders have killed billions of innocent people. They've destroyed entire civilizations. Where we come from, some crimes are beyond forgiveness." The battle ended in less than 4 hours. 412 Vorthok vessels had entered the Zolano system. None left. The debris field that marked their destruction stretched across millions of kilometers, a monument to the price of threatening a human-protected world. All Terran vessels, stand down to condition yellow, Admiral Chun announced. Begin cleanup operations. I want every piece of Vorthok technology analyzed and cataloged. As the human fleet began the systematic collection and study of enemy wreckage, Cathara found herself staring at the tactical display in shocked silence. In a few short hours, her understanding of galactic power structures had been completely overturned. These Terrans, these Deathworld predators, had not just defeated the Vorthok. They had obliterated them so completely that no trace of the Raider fleet remained. And they had done it with a casual efficiency that spoke of vast experience in warfare on a scale the peaceful galaxy had never imagined. Admiral Chun, she called out, her voice shaking slightly. On behalf of the Zolani Confederation, I thank you for your aid. But I must ask, who are you people? The human's image appeared on screen one more time, and her predatory smile seemed somehow warmer than before. Ambassador, we're the ones who answer when good peep. 3 months after the Battle of Zolanos Prime, the galaxy was a very different place. Ambassador Cathara stood in the Great Council Chamber of the Galactic Peaceful Alliance, watching as representatives from hundreds of worlds argued about the new reality they all faced. The arrival of the Terrans had shattered every assumption about galactic civilization. The humans must be contained, declared Senator Thylex of the Altarian Republic, his blue skin flushed with indignation. They possess weapons that violate every treaty we've signed. Their methods of warfare are barbaric and excessive. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly, but Cathara noticed that many representatives remained silent. These were the delegates from worlds that had faced Vorthok raids, worlds that had begged for aid from the Alliance and been told that help was not available. They remembered who had answered their calls when their so-called allies had found excuses to look away. With respect, Senator Thylex, Cathara said, rising to address the assembly. The Altarian Republic declined to assist my people when we faced extinction. The humans did not. Perhaps we should consider why a previously unknown species was more willing to honor the principles of our alliance than its actual members. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Representatives shouted about protocol, about the chain of command, about the need for proper authorization before military action. But underlying all their words was a fear that none of them wanted to admit. They were afraid of the humans. Admiral Chun had been invited to address the assembly, and her presentation 3 days ago had left the galactic community in shock. The humans, it turned out, were not a recently spacefaring species. They had been exploring and colonizing star systems for over 2 centuries, building a vast network of worlds and space stations throughout what the galaxy had dismissed as uninhabitable regions. Humanity had emerged from a world so hostile that it had forged them into something the peaceful galaxy had never seen. Natural warriors with an unshakable moral code. They had watched the rise and fall of galactic civilizations, studied the politics and conflicts of known space, and made a conscious decision to remain hidden until the moment they were truly needed. The humans have been watching us, Dr. Venth had whispered after Admiral Chun's presentation, studying us like specimens in a laboratory. But Cathara understood the truth was more complex. The humans had been waiting, not for conquest or domination, but for a moment when their unique capabilities could make a difference. They had emerged not as conquerors but as guardians. The floor recognizes Admiral Chun of the Terran Defense Fleet, announced the assembly speaker, a tall, thin being whose species had perfected the art of diplomatic neutrality over millennia. Admiral Chun strode to the central podium with the confident stride of someone who had faced down death and emerged victorious. She wore a simple uniform that somehow managed to look more impressive than the elaborate robes and ceremonial armor favored by other military leaders in the assembly. "Honored representatives," she began, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber, 3 months ago, You learned of humanity's existence when we responded to a distress call that your own forces chose to ignore. Today, I'm here to discuss the future of this galaxy and humanity's role in it. Senator Thylex leaned forward aggressively. Admiral, your forces employed weapons of mass destruction against the Vorthag fleet. Nuclear ordnance is banned by galactic treaty. Your actions constitute war crimes under established law. Admiral Chun's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes grew harder. Senator, in the past 3 months, my people have liberated 14 worlds from Vorthak occupation. We've rescued over 3 billion beings from slavery, torture, and death. We've destroyed 6 more raider fleets and captured enough enemy technology to revolutionize galactic defensive capabilities. If you want to call that a war crime, that says more about your priorities than mine. The chamber fell silent. Since the Battle of Zelanos Prime, reports had been flooding in from across the galaxy. Human fleets had appeared wherever the Vorthak struck, moving with impossible speed to places that should have taken weeks to reach. They fought with tactics and technologies that seemed to violate the laws of physics, and they showed no mercy to those who preyed on the innocent. But that's not why I'm here, Admiral Chen continued. I'm here because humanity has made a decision. We're tired of watching from the shadows while good people suffer and their supposed allies find reasons to abandon them. She activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. It showed a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy with human territories marked in blue. The assembled representatives gasped as they realized the true scope of human civilization. Humanity controlled nearly 15% of the galaxy's inhabitable systems, concentrated in regions that had been written off as too dangerous for colonization. We've been building, growing, and preparing for 3 centuries, Admiral Chun explained. We've terraformed worlds that you couldn't even visit without environmental suits. We've established trade routes through hyperspace corridors you didn't know existed, and we've been watching as your alliance has grown weak, corrupt, and indifferent to the suffering of its own members. Representative Kilmara of the Siverian Union stood up, her purple skin pale with shock. You're talking about replacing the alliance. You want to conquer the galaxy. Admiral Chun's laugh was sharp and cold. Conquer? Representative Kilmara, if we wanted to conquer the galaxy, do you really think we'd be having this conversation? After what you saw us do to the Vorthak, do you believe your fleets could stop us if we decided to take what we wanted by force? The truth of that statement settled over the assembly like a heavy blanket. The humans had demonstrated capabilities that made them effectively invincible by galactic standards. If they wanted conquest, there was nothing the existing powers could do to stop them. But we don't want conquest, Admiral Chun continued, her voice softening slightly. We want something your alliance has forgotten how to provide. Justice. Protection for the innocent. Consequences for those who prey on the weak. Cathara rose from her seat. What exactly are you proposing, Admiral? A new compact? Admiral Chun replied. An alliance based on mutual aid and protection, not empty diplomatic gestures. When a member world calls for help, help arrives. When bullies threaten innocent people, those bullies learn that actions have consequences. When raiders and slavers think they can prey on peaceful civilizations, they discover that there are predators far more dangerous than they are. The holographic display changed, showing the current political map of the galaxy. Red zones marked areas under threat from various hostile forces, pirates, raiders, rogue states, and worse. Then the display shifted, showing how human intervention could eliminate these threats in a matter of months. We're offering our protection to any world that wants it, Admiral Shun announced. No conditions, no payment required, no political obligations. Just a simple promise: threaten innocent people within our sphere of protection and face the consequences. Senator Thylex stood again, his voice shaking with anger. This is madness. You're talking about destabilizing the entire galactic order. The galactic order was already broken, Admiral Chun shot back. It failed the moment good people started suffering while their allies counted credits and made excuses. We're not destabilizing anything. We're offering to fix what you've allowed to rot. Over the next several hours, the debate raged through the assembly. Some representatives denounced the humans as dangerous radicals who would bring nothing but chaos. Others, particularly those from worlds that had suffered under the Alliance's indifference, spoke in favor of the human proposal, but the most telling moment came when Representative Zephyr of the Centauri Collective asked a simple question. Admiral Chun, what happens to worlds that choose not to join your compact? Nothing, Admiral Chun replied without hesitation. We're not interested in forcing anyone to accept our protection. Those who prefer the current system are welcome to keep it. But we won't stand by and watch innocent people suffer when we have the power to help. As the session ended and representatives filed out to consider humanity's proposal, Cathara approached Admiral Chun at the podium. Admiral, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Why do you care so much? Your people were safe in your hidden territories. You could have remained unknown and avoided all these complications. Admiral Chun was quiet for a moment, staring out at the empty assembly chamber. Ambassador, do you know what it's like to grow up on a world where everything is trying to kill you? Where survival means constant vigilance, constant adaptation, constant struggle? Cathara shook her head. It teaches you that strength has only one legitimate purpose: protecting those who cannot protect themselves. My ancestors fought their way up from the bottom of a food chain that included predators you can't imagine. They survived ice ages, volcanic catastrophes, and atmospheric changes that would have wiped out most species. Admiral Chun turned to face Cathara directly. We didn't become the apex predators of our world by being cruel or evil. We became apex predators by being smart, adaptable, and absolutely ruthless when it came to protecting our own. And now our own includes every innocent being in this galaxy. 6 Mo.